Good evening. The Centre recently announced a reduction in what are called disturbed areas in Assam, Manipur, and Nagaland. It's an important story as this reduces the footprint of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, also called the AFSPA, in parts of these three states. It is a decision that's extremely newsworthy. It needs to be highlighted, also because successive governments have actually shied away from it. Before all else, it's also important to know what is AFSPA and why does the law remain so controversial. Let me pause here for a moment and bring you my favorite reminder. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube or follow us on Instagram. That is, if you like your news without the noise, if you like all the context without the conflict and the tamasha that you see often. Let's start. AFSPA became a central law in 1958. It was first introduced as 4 ordinances or emergency laws in 1947. The context at that point in time was rioting in Punjab and a deteriorating situation in Assam, what's called the United Provinces, and West Bengal. In these places, the government was struggling at the time and the police had lost control. So the next step was to call the army and give them a wide berth, so to speak, to do what needed to be done to bring the situation under control. Now, that, in a sense, essentially is the crux of AFSPA. It is a small, compact law with just 7 sections, but crucially, it gives what are considered sweeping powers to the armed forces. To do what? Well, to search, seizure, arrest, the right to shoot to kill on mere suspicion, and conduct operations. AFSPA also gives armed forces the protection from legal proceedings. So they can be prosecuted only with the permission of the central government. Now, over the decades that AFSPA has been in play, this permission from the central government to prosecute members of the armed forces has actually never come. So, in a sense, protection has given way to impunity. Now, the impact of AFSPA, its use and abuse is complex and it's different in states where the law applies. Now, currently, AFSPA is applicable in Jammu and Kashmir, parts of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, and Manipur. There are 4 broad categories of reasons why the army has always insisted that it needs AFSPA, it needs the protection of AFSPA. Number 1 is that soldiers cannot discharge their duties in hostile conditions with one hand tied. So AFSPA protects them from retribution for what are legitimate actions, they say. Number 2, they claim that AFSPA does not protect wrongdoing or what are rogue actions that are performed with some kind of malified intent. These actions are dealt with strictly by military law. Number 3, in many counterinsurgency landscapes where the army is called in, civilian institutions like the police may be either compromised or may be weak and sometimes even hand in glove with insurgent outfits. So in a sense, you call them to do the dirty job. Number 4, that the army is called in only to aid the civilian government, and the precursor to that is the Disturbed Areas Act or the DAA. The DAA is actually a prerequisite for invoking the AFSPA, and this is the disturbed areas that the BJP-led government has taken a decision to restrict in 3 states. The armed forces, I'm underlining here, can use the sweeping powers of AFSPA only in areas that are called disturbed areas. So this is a supremely important move. Now, who holds the decision to call an area a disturbed area? Well, that decision rests with the government. It could be central and state. If we do a quick reading of Section 3 of the DAA, it says that any area can be declared disturbed due to differences or disputes between members of different religious, racial, language, or regional groups or castes or communities. Now, when AFSPA was actually first introduced as an ordinance in 1947, it came with a very explicit guarantee that areas are not going to be called or labeled as disturbed forever. It's going to be only for limited periods of time till the situation improves. But this guarantee actually didn't stand the test of time, and large parts of the country have been called disturbed and have been under AFSPA for decades on the end. Why so? Well, the reason again varies across states and situations. Let me start with the example of Jammu and Kashmir, for instance, where the army, which is up against insurgents and infiltrators from Pakistan, has vociferously opposed withdrawal or even reduction in areas where the AFSPA applies. This even when situation improved, even when erstwhile state governments were actually pushing for it. In Manipur, even though the security situation improved, state governments across party lines continued to invoke the Disturbed Areas Act and therefore the AFSPA. So you see the situation is dramatically different. In Manipur, every 6 months, no matter which government, sometimes the same disturbed areas notification was released with nothing changing, not even the text, just the date. Sometimes it was actually released retrospectively. Up until last month, when the centre announced that the Disturbed Areas Act is going to be removed from 3 states, from several districts of Nagaland, from Manipur, and partially from 1 district in Assam on account of the improved security situation. This means that AFSPA no longer applies in these areas after being in force for decades. I must underline here, in case there is any confusion, please note that the law has not been repealed. Ironically, one other time that the AFSPA was revoked from 7 assembly constituencies of Imphal was in 2004. The situation was dramatically different. The custodial rape and brutal killing of Thangjaram Manorma at that point in time by the Assam Rifles had triggered unprecedented protests in the state, including the tragically infamous protest of the Imas, or the mothers of Manipur. Let's look at Nagaland, where one of the reasons could be the 21 Para Special Forces operation in Oting that went horribly wrong. It led to the death of 6 coal miners who were returning home from work, and another 7 civilians and 1 soldier died in subsequent violence. In fact, chief ministers of Nagaland and Meghalaya, both of them allied to the BJP, the party at the centre, were demanding strongly that the AFSPA be withdrawn. Nagaland's assembly unanimously voted for it as well. In fact, another bit of very interesting context is that Nagaland has often asked for the Disturbed Areas Act and the AFSPA to be withdrawn, but has claimed that its opinion has never been considered seriously. The centre and successive governments extended the law, even though state and legislative assemblies sometimes voted against it, which is also why this move by the BJP-led government to reduce the areas that come under the DAA and thus the AFSPA is a significant one. Remember, the government constituted a panel after the Oting incident to review the withdrawal of the AFSPA in Nagaland. This, in a sense, was the first time since 2014 that there has been substantial movement on this front. In fact, it's this very government that rejected the Jeevan Reddy Commission report. This was instituted by the UPA government after the 2004 incident. It recommended the repeal of AFSPA, but it lay unattended for years till it was rejected in 2015. Also, the Army's views on AFSPA haven't really changed much, though there has been thinking in sections that it was time to reduce the Army's footprint in fighting counterinsurgency and really concentrate on national security threats. I'm coming towards the end of this video. We've only scratched the surface in explaining the AFSPA, how it plays out on the ground, the many human rights violations that have been perpetrated under its umbrella, Why is the military law not enough? And also the economy of AFSPA. Most importantly, also why so many people call it a black law that has no place in a democracy like ours. I want to hear more from you because I want to do more, perhaps a video on Jammu and Kashmir and AFSPA, perhaps a video on what has AFSPA achieved, its role in decreasing insurgencies, or perhaps on legal battles in court against the AFSPA. If you'd like to see a video or more conversations or anything else that you may have in mind, do tell us. Drop a comment there. You must be wondering why we have concentrated so much on AFSPA. It's not really a topic that you'd see possibly in legacy media. I also have a lot of body of work on looking at the impact of AFSPA in some of the northeastern states. It's in this book called Mother, Where's My Country? If you get a chance, perhaps you could purchase it. It is available on Amazon and in bookstores as well. Before I go, thank you for your time, and do remember, we need your support to help do more work that is newsworthy, that is befitting your time, intellect, mental health, and the state of the nation. Thanks for watching.